Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today, I'm going to be covering this book, The Door on Half Bald Hill. I bought this used at Coas for $8.50, and what I really liked about it was the cover is very unusual. I like the design of it. The binding is this nice mixture of red and black, and the red on the binding and on the jacket looks almost like the same red as in this sun, and it's a really good design. This book is copyright 2020, written by Helena Sorensen, and the cover design is by Stephen Kratz along with the illustration. As she says in the acknowledgments, the seed for The Door on Half Bald Hill was planted when I saw a distinctive hill near mile marker 100 on I-24 South between Nashville and Chattanooga. I am forever indebted to the landowner who chose to clear half his hill and leave the other half wooded. If you grow up or just know the West, a lot of mountains are like that. In fact, a lot of mountains in the higher elevations on the East Coast are also like that. I want to say the Dolly Sods Wilderness is a good example of that in West Virginia, where one side, the windy side, has very few trees, if at all, and then the downwind side will have a lot of trees, and the ones nearer the ridgeline will have branches. The ones nearer the ridgeline will have branches in the direction of the wind. So you can always tell what the prominent winds are in that area, even if you're not feeling it, because you'll see it in the trees. And I can think of another good example in the west is Mount Taylor, west of Albuquerque. You see a lot of trees. It's kind of like has a false summit covered in trees. One half, the western half, is just a lot of trees. The other half, the eastern half that faces Albuquerque, is almost entirely bald. It could very easily have been called Blanca, like so many other mountains. In fact, near me is Sierra Blanca, and that is a similar tree where half of it is wooded, and then the other half is grassy. So, she got her inspiration from somewhere out east, but that's a kind of mountain you see all over the place, and I really love finding those kinds of mountains. It's really fun, and also kind of a bit disappointing to see just rolling hills all the way down, and then the forest, which is what I really love, on the other side. I'd rather be in the forested side of all of these mountains. Now, this book does come with an interesting map here. And what I found a bit curious about it, this setting is loosely based on Irish mythology, but I don't know, the Irish myth aspects of this were less interesting to me than the apocalyptic aspects of this. In this setting, a great and powerful witch has effectively punished the people of her land because the Firbolg were told, don't come over the sea ever again, don't come on this side of the world. And by side of the world, I mean effectively like a different dimension. They have their own lands which are not of Earth. And so the Firbolg are told not to go back, but there's a kind of a custody battle going on, and not in a litigious sense, not in a strictly legal sense, but a battle over who has the rights to the land, and the humans are being pushed back, and the waters are being poisoned by this witch, and every year another famine hits, and so this has been famine for decades now, and then finally, and by decades I mean The main character is approaching 20-ish, I want to say. Idris is the main character's name. So the main character, Idris, has lived his entire life in famine and is the bard of basically the entire island who is expected to do certain ceremonies. Meanwhile, there are a couple other primary responsibilities in a spiritual sense. There's the druid, which used to be both the druid and the bard and was split into two different people. The Ovate of Blackthorn is also considered the master of death, and it is they who presides over prophecies and of the end of things. And she comes back with a prophecy of all of their doom, and the bard feels that this isn't right, and so the bard is going out there to Half Bald Hill, which is the seventh hill, and because food growth is incredibly minimal each year, because cattle are almost non-existent, they carry just a handful of oats to eat per day along with their water. And this person travels out and their first mission fails, and then they travel out again and their second mission succeeds. It's one of those kinds of stories, but it's a very interesting first person perspective, and it uses a lot of Irish mythology in a way that I enjoyed. I really liked the imagery. The illustrations felt very, how do I put it? I have to find one for you. The illustrations feel very bare bones. So this is an example of one of those illustrations. Or if I can find another one, there's here. So very bare bones illustrations, black and white, and kind of rough looking in design, but very fun to look at. And they fit very well with the surrounding chapters. I just really loved this book. It was interesting. Like I said, I was less enthused about the Irish myth aspect of it. It felt like it didn't wrap up in a sufficient way, whereas the rest of the story did actually do so. I would recommend it to other people if you want to read something kind of Irish myth inspired. This one did take me a while to finish. I started it in September, middle of September, and didn't finish it until late October of 2024. So, it was one that I could pick up and then maybe read a bit, but it was really hard to read it all in one go. It was just really hard to read it all in one go. It was a book that I just enjoyed parts of. Like I said, though, it did take me a while to finish, and when I did finish it, I remembered it more for the vibe than any specific occurrences within it. So yeah, if you want to read something with that kind of vibe, it is an end of the world story, but it is about new beginnings as well and reconciling the past. So it deals with the past, it deals a lot with the dangerous present, and it deals with the hopeful future in a really interesting way. And like I said, just the cover design really grabbed my attention. I'm kind of less a fan of this style of like binding where the pages aren't all the same length, but that is also the vibe it's going for. So yeah, I'd recommend this book. Like I said, anyone who likes Irish myth, anyone who likes kind of a lower stakes fantasy, this is also a good one. There's no big fights, there's no calamitous events. It's a slow decaying death going on, and it is a slow struggle to succeed against it. So I liked it. So yeah, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.